What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the highest ranking woman in the corporate offices of the National Football League, Renie Anderson. In 2019, Commissioner Roger Goodell named Renie the Chief Revenue Officer and Executive Vice President of NFL Partnerships. She oversees the league's sponsorships, new business, and media sales for their NFL network. You may have seen NFL players using Microsoft Surface tablets on the sidelines. That is a visual example of one of Renie's many roles on display. Her team sets out to integrate NFL partners like Microsoft in unique ways. She is in Sports Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Hall of Fame, so I'm very excited to talk to her about how her competitive nature shapes her leadership. And as always, make sure you download our free bonus resource, which includes fill-in-the-blank notes and reflection questions for today's conversation.
My morning is very locked in on time. Wake up at 6. I'm on the train at 7:26. I instantly put my headphones in and I listen to music. It's going to set the tone and be upbeat because I want to come in here and get stuff done because I need to be on the 5:33 train that gets home at 6:35 so I can pick Kate up from karate at 6:52, like clockwork.
Renie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
You know, it's 2007. You're the tip of the spear working to replace a Super Bowl halftime sponsor.
That's right.
In the process of working toward that end goal, you also happened to be pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you had to keep things going even on maternity leave because it had to get done. Tell us about focus, discipline, what it means to, no matter the situation, make sure that you are able to be the one that delivers.
Yeah, literally delivered. You know, it's funny. My daughter Callie is 15 now. August 23rd, 2007 is the date. I only had one job at that point. It was new business. If I wasn't doing it, then no one was doing it.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with Kern Egan, who was the agency at the time for Bridgestone. Kern and I talk about today how neither of us really knew what we were doing at the time, but we both, were trying to just power through. And we got a verbal agreement on the terms of the deal. And Kern, like any contact would do, it says, okay, well, let's get on a phone call tomorrow with our lawyers so we can start to hammer this stuff out. Listen, man, I need 2 days. I didn't tell you this, but I'm in the hospital. I'm being induced. I'm having a baby. She was born at 10:27 that night. And I was home 2 days later and we were hammering away the contract 2 days later, which was great. When you're in new business and you're in sales, you just power through and you work hard to get those deals done. And it's a little bit of what are you willing to sacrifice? Timing sometimes just works out that way. I'd also been a part of a working group here at the NFL that got to present a special project to the commissioner. And it was the week before. And I remember thinking like, oh, I hope I don't have this baby because I need to be there for this presentation so I can have that opportunity to present to the executive leadership group, which was really important for me. I'm not really built any other way. I'm kind of 110% or nothing. I'm glad that I powered through because I probably wouldn't have the job I have today if I hadn't have powered through and worked on that deal, but definitely have learned a little bit of balance now in my old age here at the NFL.
So when you speak to young women today, how do you counsel them on stages of career?
Any part of your career for men or women is what are you willing to sacrifice? And I mean that in the nicest way where it's not, I don't garden. I see my friends when I can in the weekdays because I really focus on my family on the weekends and after school. And there's different phases of life. When I was younger, I could put my head down and do my job and travel all the places because I didn't have any other things that were more important at that point. As I grew my family, I needed to make sure I was balancing that. I wish someone had told me earlier in life that in the beginning, it's just about keeping the babies alive. That was really what it was about. And now, as my kids are 15 and 13, it's harder now as a parent to balance because life's more important and things are more important in their world. Not that when they're 1 or 2, it's not more important. It was probably more important to me versus my girls. People have to figure out what works for them, and what works for me, Renie, may not work for another person. Everyone has different ways that they balance their careers. It's just, a little bit of figuring out where your strengths are and leaning into those. And mine happen to be that I'm a little different than everyone else, and that I'm a woman is a bonus.
That's such great counsel. This idea that everybody will want to tell you, well, here's what you need to be doing. The truth is, you have to do what works for you first. And secondly, you have to understand that there will be phases. And in the phases, you will react differently to different situations. The Bridgestone deal is just one of the many notable accomplishments as I was looking through all that you've done for the league, highest ranking woman in the NFL corporate level. If you look around the professional sports league, it seems like there are more and more women in powerful decision-making roles. A generation ago, there were practically none. We had Leslie Visser on. She gets to look at how many of those young women are able to kind of follow in a pair of footsteps that she's very proud to have made. How does that make you feel? And what do you think it means to our future?
All of our leagues, we all compete for viewership, for fans, for engagement, for money and revenue, for talent, and we want to win. Somewhat like we do every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday here at the NFL, like our teams, they all compete. And we do that by making sure we have the best talent. We here at the NFL have significant amount of senior women in senior positions at the table making big decisions that matter. And that's in football operations, that's in accounting, that's in our legal department, and our chief administrative officer is my colleague, Dacia Smith. It's one that I'm really proud of because we're experts within the space. It's a bonus that we're women. Thankfully, we've been able to find really strong professionals that happen to be women. And what we're seeing now, which is great, is that more women are seeing opportunities within a variety of ranks, not just in the marketing ranks, but also in the football or in the sports specific, even in coaching and officiating. As a college kid, I didn't realize that this job existed. I thought working in sports was being like Aaron Andrews or Jerry Maguire. I mean, who even knew what this job was? And now within universities, there are a variety of students that are actually majoring in sponsorship sales or majoring in sports management because there's a vast array of opportunities in the sports industry to lean into. It's a really great opportunity. And you want to have that diversity of voice around the table as you're making big decisions and working on key business.
Speaking of being a college kid, I know you graduated with a journalism degree from Ole Miss,
I did.
the Harvard of the South.
Hotty toddy. That's right.
Then you moved to California to become a novelist. How in the world do you find your way trying to be the next John Grisham to where you are today?
Well, it was the year that Titanic came out and Good Will Hunting. I say that because I remember going to the theater to see those films. And I remember thinking, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to write an amazing screenplay. I'm going to probably marry Leonardo DiCaprio and win an Oscar. When I moved out there, ultimately what happened is I needed to pay rent. So I went to a temp agency to more or less find a job. So I was a receptionist for a variety of companies. And then I ended up meeting David Baker. David at the time was the commissioner of the Arena Football League. He had been the mayor of Irvine, California, and he needed an assistant slash receptionist. His office was closer to where I lived at the time. There were only like 8 people on the staff. So I was like, okay, great. I became Dave's personal assistant and like work assistant. And my first day of work, he gave me 3 tasks. He said, I need you to balance my checkbook. I need you to go to the dry cleaners, pick up my laundry, and I need you to call NFL owners and see if they want to buy arena football teams. And he handed me a list of all 32 with their phone numbers on it. Fake it till you make it, kid. And he walked to his office. oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I go to the dry cleaners or do I call Jerry Jones? Do I call, what do I do? I just called all of the owners that day. This is Renie Anderson. I'm calling from the office of the commissioner. Please have Bud Adams call back. And actually, Mr. Adams was the first owner that did call us back.
He actually really called.
Yeah, 8 NFL owners ended up buying arena football teams. At the time, the NFL had an opportunity to buy 48% of the Arena Football League. And so Dave was working very closely with Roger Goodell, who's now the commissioner, COO at the time, on opportunities for NFL owners to have other teams. And then I worked for Dave for 2 years there. And then I volunteered to move to the East Coast to start the New York office. I was just in a cube with a bunch of other people. The guy who they'd hired at the time to be the president of properties ended up leaving. And it was sort of like, okay, well, I either need to do that job. Someone else was doing the sponsorship business. So I started doing the consumer products business, and it was taking it in-house. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a little bit of sink or swim. So I'm either going to have to learn and figure out how to run that business, or I'm not going to have a job.
Right.
More or less, my sales pitch is very storytelling. Although I was not married to Leonardo DiCaprio, I did not write a novel or a screenplay or win an Oscar. I took my skill set of telling stories into sales position. So I kind of used that skill set that I have in just a different way.
I'm hoping when Leonardo listens here today, he'll realize what a loss, what a miss he had.
But could have been.
His life could have been so different. I loved listening to another conversation you had where you talked about the fake it till you make it line that David Baker gave you, ultimately proved to be among the best advice you were ever given.
It is interesting advice because you can only fake it for so long. Like in my job today, you can't fake this job. At some point, you're making it because you actually aren't faking it. I became a real problem solver during that time of my career, because if the fax machine jammed up and I had to fax board books to owners, I had to find a solution to fix it. If Dave was traveling to visit the NFL and he lost his phone on a flight, I had to figure out a solution to find it and get it to him. So part of that faking it was more about finding solutions to solve problems and or surrounding myself with the experts in the space to figure out how to move forward. When I came to the National Football League, I had worked like almost 9 seasons at the Arena Football League doing sponsorship sales. So I knew what to do, but it was a different level here. And I remember I wasn't going to get that Bridgestone deal done if I didn't have that expertise around me from marketing, legal, finance, really create that alliance internally with key stakeholders that knew how to run those businesses and like genuine relationships with them, respecting their expertise. Business has to run like a well-oiled machine. And it does that not based off of one person, it's based off of a team mentality. And even though you may not be an expert within your seat that you sit in, having those people around you can help you learn to become an expert. Fake it till you make it is meant in a way of finding out how to do the job. You can't really fake anything, but ultimately it is surrounding yourself with people that know what they're doing, asking questions, not being afraid to raise your hand when an opportunity comes up or a project. I don't really know how to do this, but I'm going to find a way and figure out how to do it. That's how you learn.
Right.
I've been here almost 17 seasons and I'm still learning a lot of things. I'm an expert in the seat that I sit in, but I still learn a lot from my colleagues in football, my colleagues in data and analytics, a lot of other areas that I don't have that expertise. But if I have the ability to learn, I think that that helps you grow.
Being a consummate learner, big deal. I love that. The moniker teams is too often used in the corporate world. We talk about our team. Well, the truth is most corporate organizations are not a team. They're a bunch of independent contractors often fighting against each other as opposed to for each other. If you were to be counseling some younger person who has a new team leader role on how to build a team, how to take those individual piece parts and do something special, what would be the first pieces of advice you would offer?
You're right. There are a variety of quote unquote teams that people don't really work together. And a lot of that is either the selfishness of professional growth. They want the next promotion. They want the big bonus. It depends on the pieces of the team. There's a variety of different roles. There are the in front people that get all the credit. And then there are the guys that are behind the scenes. A lot of times in the sales organization, those guys get a lot of accolades and celebrations. You did this deal. That's so great. The challenge is making sure that that credit is spread out throughout the team, because one human doesn't negotiate the collective bargaining agreement. One human doesn't negotiate the long-term television agreements here at the National Football League. It takes a team of people. And often it's the team behind the scenes that you can't move without. Make sure that you celebrate the wins across the board and that you actually encourage those to really work across. Part of my success here at the National Football League has been I work well across the building with everyone, and I don't need to be the one that gets the credit. Let's give the credit across the board, because then all tides rise at that point. Even if one person, they're more important than anybody else, they can't do it by themselves. It's better to level the playing field to make sure everyone feels like their part is just as important as, quote unquote, your team leader. Everyone wants to feel like they're actually contributing. And when you do have that, everybody gives 110%.
We took a lot in some of our conversations, even within my own organization, about celebrating everyone, because there are many in your organization who are invaluable, though they are not most valuable. They'll never be celebrated like the big salesperson, but the truth is, without these folks, the work doesn't get done. You know, you have a lot of passion. It's in your voice, it's in everything that I've listened to and heard. You probably can trace a lot of your passion and all that you bring to what you do back to growing up on a farm in Western Kentucky.
Mhm.
How did your upbringing help shape you into the person that you are?
The town I grew up in was really small. It's like 3,400 people. You knew everyone and a variety of different classes, but you were sort of equal to everyone. My dad is a farmer and my mom stayed home. However, she was on the school board and she worked so hard. My dad often, I remember, would sleep in his truck out by the grain bins there, because sometimes they would turn off in the middle of the night. And if it turns off, it would go bad and or things would happen. And when he would come home, he would be covered in dust from the grain. And it was hard. Like, he had a very hard job. And my mom at the same time was really balanced and very focused on making sure that we ate at dinner every night together and, all of those things. Part of that competition is everyone was working harder, but it just depends on what your level and what you're comparing it to. But the community was very tight. I'm still very best friends with the girls I grew up with, and we all went to different schools. We all live in different places. We're close with each other's families because it really is a group that rallies around each other. I was a cheerleader, no surprise. It was like cheering for Friday Night Lights, the football team, or the basketball team was what we lived for. It was such a great experience growing up in that type of community. I also now feel very responsible of giving back to that community, cheering for people that we grew up with. I mean, we're always rooting for people that are there and or like myself have left trying to grow careers outside of that space. And so always rooting for the people that we grew up with or that are growing up there now. Very thankful for where I grew up and the people that live there, and know that if I needed something, I could go on Facebook and I would have 1,000 prayers for me from Union County, Kentucky, and people that would be here in a heartbeat because of that connection in that small town.
Any coaches or anyone that played a role in your life back then that you still think about some leadership lesson you might have taken from one of them?
One of my co-cheerleaders, her name is Melanie Price. Her dad, Coach Bill Price, was a basketball coach. He was always there. My good friend Maggie, her dad, his name is Rob Rupsch. He always had the microphone at the Little League games, calling the football game, but he would be also calling for the cheerleaders and rooting for us. Or I remember my parents always being at these football games and or basketball games to watch me cheer, which I didn't really have an impact on the outcome of the game, but it was as if important that I was there. And so there are a variety of people that have those moments of time that I think about, and mainly their parents of those of us. I mean, you see that now. I mean, I have two daughters that play softball, and my husband spends a lot of time coaching softball, the importance of being there for your kids and being that mentor and coach. My husband is definitely Coach Chris to a lot of kids, and I have that with some of my friends, their parents, for sure.
I love it. I have an eighth grade daughter, cheerleader at the same time. It's funny how much time we spend cheering for the cheerleaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's great. Every great team needs great coaches. And in the corporate world, your coaching can be from someone that can serve as a mentor. We've mentioned David Baker, one of my favorite people on the planet. Is there another mentor that has played a big role in pouring into you? And how then are you translating that and mentoring others?
Dave was interesting for me because really my very first boss ever in my life out of college. I was completely professionally immature, joined a company that was also professionally immature, and I had 8 employees at the time. It was a great time for me to be there. Everyone has this moment when you pivot, depending on what's happening in your life. In 2009, I had had my second child. I'd bought a house. My husband had been laid off. And after my second daughter, Kate, was born, I came back to work and I had a new boss, Keith Turner. Keith used to be the head of sales at NBC for a long time. And they hired Keith to come and be the head here of all revenue at the NFL. Keith was a great mentor for me. I remember one time the VP of new business was open. I applied and Keith was very upfront with me. You're not ready, but here's what you need to do to be ready the next time that job is available. He spent a lot of time with me on presenting on how to manage professional frustration. Like I used to be known as red face Renie. I would get so mad and not necessarily yell at people, but frustrated in the office and how you manage that. And so he really helped me handle a certain situation that could be frustrating, handle a certain situation if the person across the table is being unprofessional. Because he was cool, calm, and collected. Nothing ever seemed to phase him. He spent a lot of time with me on that, which was great. And he left to be the head of sales at Univision. I got the opportunity to step into more roles, and Keith, the time that he spent with me was really valuable. I mean, we would go to meetings together, and after the meeting, he would tell me what I did great and what I need to do better on next time.
Right.
The key is being self-aware. I one time had a colleague that he was so frustrated with me. His job was selling sponsorships on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being you're hitting it out of the park, you're exceeding expectations. He'd given himself a 5 and I'd given him a 2, which if 3 means you're doing the job, 2 means you're not even doing the job. He's like, I'm just knocking it out of the park. And I'm like, you haven't sold a single sponsorship. Like you haven't even done the job. And he's like, but I was so close on a lot of these.
Right.
If you're not self-aware, that's the biggest problem. If you think that you're awesome and you're a great presenter, but maybe you say 1,000 times and you stutter, which again, those things are hard, but if you don't practice, you don't prepare, you don't ask for feedback, you're never really going to get better. I'm really bad at math. It's not my thing, but I know that. And I surround myself with making sure I'm with the finance group and I'm really quick on the calculator. And, it's about being self-aware, understanding how you're perceived by others and knowing what areas that you need to evolve on. And I don't want to use necessarily weaknesses, it's opportunities. Early on, I was definitely very independent and didn't want to ask anyone for help, putting down a little bit of my pride and asking for help in areas that I could have accelerated a little bit earlier. It's hard to go back and say what I would do differently in a sense, because there's nothing I can do about that. And so I think ultimately not being as prideful and making sure that you're doing everything you can to succeed and surrounding yourself with the right people and observing others and understanding some of the things that they have that you want to put into your wheelhouse of how to be an executive is really important. And a lot of times knowing that some people don't want to help you, and that's okay too.
I love it. I've spent 30 years in journalism. Much of it has been asking great coaches, great athletes, if they could identify one habit, a daily routine that they built into their life that they believe gave them an advantage over others, something that they committed themselves to. Is there a habit that you built into your routines that made a difference in the way you've grown?
I was thinking about this the other day. My morning is very locked in on time. Like I wake up at 6. I have to take the dog for a walk at 6:30. My first daughter gets on the bus at 7:01. The second one gets on at 7:16, and I'm on the train at 7:26, like clockwork. Once I sit on the train, I instantly put my headphones in and I listen to music to kind of set the tone. Today, it's kind of gloomy and rainy, which means you're going to be kind of in a blah day. I'm going to listen to music that's going to set the tone and be upbeat because I want to come in here and get stuff done because I need to be on the 5:33 train that gets home at 6:35 so I can pick Kate up from karate at 6:52.
Wow.
I'm very grateful to be here and I'm not going to waste every day. Some days I try to give it 110%. Other days might be 90 if it's raining and I've got a lot going on. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. I do try to make sure that I check in on the team often, how I can help assist them and grow. I do that daily. I don't check in on everybody every day, but people every day. It's hard to reach everybody, but I think if that's something that I can do as a leader and somewhat as a coach, they always check in on the team just so they know that I'm here and that I want to encourage them. Because if they're doing great, then I'm doing great. If they're not doing great, then I'm not doing great. It's a ripple effect.
You talked about David Baker's advice, fake it till you make it, best advice you got, kind of helped you develop confidence in that early stage of your career. You also mentioned that the worst piece of advice that you ever received was not to be so emotional.
Mhm. Women get that advice sometimes, like, "Don't be so emotional. Listen, this is who I am. It's the best part of me. I run hot and I run on emotion, and I can't really change that." One time I was at a Super Bowl. There was an incident. We were trying to throw this person out of the suite. They were intoxicated. They puked a couple of times, and it was the spouse of someone important. At first, there were these executives were like, "We should just keep her in here." And I mean, she had made a mess of it, and she had young children. It was a mess. The second time that this incident happened, I'm holding her, and I'm very frustrated. We had security in there, and I had three senior executives that were men of the National Football League came over to the door of the suite. I couldn't speak because I was about to cry. I could feel the tear in my eye. I was somewhat outraged because we should have probably kicked her out the first time with security and her children, but she, it's like, oh, she's important. Don't do it. And I was doing everything humanly possible to not have that tear fall down my face. But it came down and it was like the tear heard around America. The one executive went left, the other one went right, the other one ran away as fast as possible. Tina Fey wrote this book, Bossy Pants.
Yeah.
In the book, she talks about how people always tell women, don't cry at work, don't cry at work. Like nobody wants to cry at work, nobody. But she said in her book, I say cry, it will terrify everyone.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, again, the last thing I ever want to do is have that. But part of it is because I care so much that it just sometimes happens. That's advice women get sometimes. Or the whole like, she's too much. You're welcome. I am. I've got a lot of energy, very excited. I'm happy to be here. I can't change that about myself. And I don't think I want to.
No, don't. It works for you and it works for those around you, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, just manage it. Again, you're not going to lose your mind in a meeting and scream off the top of your head, not going to bawl crying in other moments, but I'm passionate and I care about what I do professionally and the team I work with. And I'm going to put that emotion up there because that is what drives me, I guess.
I love it. Renie, thank you. It has been I'm emotionally jacked right now.
Yeah.
Love what I've learned prior to getting a chance to get on this call, and I've loved even more what you're teaching us today. It's a great gift when we get a chance to get into the mind of those who are carving a path ahead of us that many of us want to one day walk. And I'm so glad you didn't meet Leonardo DiCaprio.
Me too. Me too. I'm too old for him anyway.
Now, back then it would have been okay.
I know.
But more importantly, I thank you today for being a corporate competitor with us. It's been a great gift. Your lessons will resonate for many, many, many years.
Thanks so much for having me, Don. It was great.
Wow. She was not kidding when she said she brings energy to everything she does. I felt it just coming right through the screen as we were talking. I do have to tell you, there were three lessons that stood out most to me. The first, that lesson taught to her by her boss, David Baker, when she was working in the Arena Football League. Young, didn't really have a nice idea of everything that was being asked of her. And he gave her that advice, fake it till you make it. We've all heard that phrase. Too often, I think it implies you don't really have to ever master anything, just fake it. The truth is, as she expressed it, what he was telling her was, look like you have some confidence, but then go out immediately, find the solutions to the problems, even if you have no idea of where to go. But the where to go should include the idea of surrounding yourself with the right people, people you can tap, people that can help you. My second big takeaway was that opening story when she talked about her early days at the NFL and all she was willing to go through closing a deal on a major sponsor from the maternity ward as she was giving birth. She was 100% or nothing in everything she did, but she recognized that that was a stage of her career. There are different stages in our career, and in each stage, you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice here? In each stage, it requires a reevaluation. What are you willing to sacrifice? How am I willing to grow? And then finally, the story she shared about the vice president, Keith Turner, that was there, and that while she was looking at a job opportunity, he let her know, "You're not ready." Instead of reacting negatively, she actually put her pride to the side. She said, "Here's the deal. What can I do to be ready when that job comes open next?" In that openness and her self-awareness, she was able to find the ways that she could grow and be ready to become one day the chief revenue officer of the most powerful sporting league in the United States. What an awesome lesson. So many great things to learn. I hope you, like me, will be a better corporate competitor for having set through this time. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir. How are
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.